How significant was Malcolm X's contribution to the civil rights movement, and how does his legacy continue to influence society today? Born as Malcolm Little, and later known as El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, Malcolm X was an American Muslim minister and a tireless human rights activist. He was a beacon of the civil rights movement, and his influence persists even today, years after his untimely death. As a spokesman for the Nation of Islam until 1964, Malcolm X was a fervent advocate for Black empowerment and the promotion of Islam within the Black community. His posthumous autobiography, a collaboration with Alex Haley, was published in 1965 and continues to inspire and educate millions about his life and work. Malcolm X's life wasn't always so focused. His adolescence was marked by turmoil and uncertainty, spent in foster homes and with relatives after his father's death and his mother's hospitalization. He committed various crimes, leading to a prison sentence of 8 to 10 years. It was in prison that he found the Nation of Islam and adopted the name Malcolm X to symbolize his unknown African ancestral surname, while rejecting the white slave master name of Little. Once paroled in 1952, Malcolm X quickly rose to prominence within the Nation of Islam, becoming one of its most influential leaders. He was the public face of the organization for 12 years, advocating for Black empowerment and the separation of Black and white Americans. He wasn't without controversy, though. Malcolm X openly criticized Martin Luther King Jr. and the mainstream civil rights movement for its emphasis on nonviolence and racial integration, causing friction within the civil rights community. Yet, Malcolm X's story doesn't end there. The 1960s saw him grow disillusioned with the Nation of Islam and its leader, Elijah Muhammad. He embraced Sunni Islam and the civil rights movement after completing the Hajj to Mecca, adopting the name El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. His life was tragically cut short in 1965 when he was assassinated in New York City. Let's delve into the life of this iconic figure and understand his journey. Born Malcolm Little in 1925, his journey towards becoming Malcolm X was far from easy. His early life was marked by turbulence and hardship. A tragic car accident claimed the life of his father when Malcolm was just a small child. His mother, unable to cope with the loss, was hospitalized, leaving Malcolm and his siblings to fend for themselves. This led to them being dispersed among various foster homes and relatives. As a teenager, Malcolm resorted to a life of crime to survive. His activities ranged from petty theft to more serious offenses like larceny and burglary. These actions eventually led to his arrest and subsequent sentencing to 8 to 10 years in prison in 1946. It was a harsh reality for a young man barely out of his teens. But little did he know, this would be the beginning of a transformative journey. It was in prison where Malcolm's life would take a significant turn. In the confines of a prison cell, Malcolm Little transformed into Malcolm X. In the mid-40s, Malcolm found himself serving an 8 to 10-year prison sentence for larceny and burglary. It was during this time that he first came into contact with the Nation of Islam, a religious and social movement preaching Black empowerment and self-reliance. The teachings resonated deeply with Malcolm, who was searching for meaning and identity amidst the tumult of his life. In his quest for self-definition, Malcolm renounced his surname Little, viewing it as a legacy of slavery. He adopted the name X to symbolize his unknown African ancestral surname, marking a rebirth of sorts, a metamorphosis from Malcolm Little into Malcolm X. Upon his release from prison in 1952, Malcolm X quickly rose through the ranks of the Nation of Islam. His charisma, passion, and eloquence propelled him to the forefront of the organization. He became a vocal advocate for Black empowerment, promoting the teachings of the nation within the Black community. For 12 years, Malcolm X served as the public face of the organization. His fiery speeches challenged mainstream civil rights narratives, criticizing their emphasis on nonviolence and integration. His advocacy for racial separation and Black self-determination marked a distinct and controversial approach to the struggle for civil rights. Malcolm X also took pride in the social welfare achievements of the Nation of Islam, such as its free drug rehabilitation program. These initiatives, he believed, were vital in uplifting the Black community, a testament to the power of self-reliance and communal solidarity. From the 1950s and onwards, Malcolm X's influence continued to grow. However, his relationship with the Nation of Islam began to strain. Disagreements with the organization's leader, Elijah Muhammad, and disillusionment with some of the group's teachings marked the beginnings of a rift. Despite his rising influence, Malcolm X would eventually find himself at odds with the nation. The 1960s brought about a change in Malcolm X, leading him to question his allegiances. He had been a vocal and prominent figure in the Nation of Islam for over a decade, but the cracks in his faith in the organization were beginning to show. The man who had once been a staunch advocate for Black empowerment under the banner of the Nation of Islam was growing disillusioned with its teachings and its leader, Elijah Muhammad. Malcolm's journey to self-discovery took him thousands of miles away from home, to the holy city of Mecca. This pilgrimage, a cornerstone of the Islamic faith, proved to be a transformative experience for Malcolm. In the sacred city, he saw people of all races and backgrounds united in devotion, a stark contrast to the racial segregation he had fought against back home. This experience led him to embrace Sunni Islam, an embracement that marked a turning point in his ideological journey. Upon his return, Malcolm X, now known as El-Hajj Malik el-Shabazz, publicly renounced the Nation of Islam. He began to advocate for a more inclusive approach to racial justice, a significant departure from his previous stance. His transformation was not just ideological but also practical. He put his beliefs into action, founding the Islamic Muslim Mosque, Inc. and the Pan-African Organization of Afro-American Unity. These organizations were a testament to his evolving vision of unity, equality, and justice. However, this transformation did not come without a cost. His departure from the Nation of Islam sparked a bitter conflict that would have far-reaching consequences. His new stance was met with hostility from those who had once been his allies, and his life was increasingly under threat. Yet, Malcolm X remained undeterred, standing firm in his beliefs and continuing to champion the cause of racial justice. But as Malcolm X's influence grew, so did the threats to his life. On February 21, 1965, the world lost one of its most influential civil rights leaders. On that day, the life of Malcolm X was tragically cut short. The scene was the Audubon Ballroom in New York City, where Malcolm X was preparing to address his followers. Suddenly, 3 men rushed forward, their guns drawn, and in a hail of bullets, they ended a life that had become a beacon of hope for many. In the aftermath of the assassination, 3 members of the Nation of Islam were charged with Malcolm X's murder. They were handed indeterminate life sentences. However, the mystery surrounding his death has never been fully resolved. Even after more than half a century, speculation endures. Was his assassination conceived or aided by other leading members of the Nation of Islam? Did law enforcement agencies turn a blind eye or even play a part? The answers to these questions remain elusive, shrouded in a fog of uncertainty and suspicion. Yet despite the tragic circumstances of his death, Malcolm X's legacy lives on. He remains a symbol of Black empowerment and a vocal advocate for the rights of African Americans. His teachings continue to inspire new generations, encouraging them to stand tall in the face of adversity and to fight for their rights. In recognition of his contributions to civil rights and racial justice, Malcolm X has been posthumously honored in numerous ways. Each year, Malcolm X Day is celebrated in various cities across the United States, a day dedicated to remembering his life and his legacy. Streets and schools across the country bear his name, a testament to the lasting impact of his life's work. Even the Audubon Ballroom, the very site of his assassination, has been transformed into a memorial and educational center, dedicated to preserving the memory of Malcolm X and his wife, Dr. Betty Shabazz. Though his life was cut short, Malcolm X's impact on civil rights and racial justice continues to echo through the ages. His voice, though silenced, still speaks volumes, and his message, though decades old, remains as relevant as ever.